Hello, in this video, I want to explain what is the ideology of Trump. How can we explain all this madness happening in recent times? And I'm not talking so much about Trump's internal policy, that is also, it appears to be kind of crazy with Doge and Elon Musk and everything. But I'll focus on his external policy because that part actually can affect me and in a way is affecting me because I'm from Europe. So why is the president of the United States threatening Canada with territorial annexation? How can we explain this madness and threatening Greenland and Mexico with potential war? So what's the master plan behind it? Why does Trump appear to be breaking the liberal world order that was established by Henry Truman? And Stalin and Churchill. So why is Trump going against this conventional wisdom that the Western world, like uh, Europe, America, Canada, and the Western world should be united against Russia and China, or at least against Russia? All presidents up until this latest version of Trump actually agreed that um, Europe and America should have good relationship. Now, some people are comparing Trump with Hitler and saying that he wants to completely break the liberal world order and just take us back to the age of conquest, to the age when law of the battlefield, as Hitler used to say, was the only law. That is one possibility, and I do think that comparisons with Hitler are legitimate insofar as if Trump truly goes full fascist mode, the damage that he could do is equivalent to Hitler, if not even greater. Actually, because America is more powerful than Hitler's military in 1939. But okay, obviously there are also some enormous differences between Hitler's ideology and Trump. For example, Hitler was obsessed with race, with anti-Semitism, while Trump, he doesn't really speak about race, although some racist groups support him, but Trump himself never really talks about race and appears to be actually very tolerant when it comes to race. So his ideology is definitely much more similar to Mussolini. For Mussolini, the nation was the main concept. It was all about being loyal to your nation, and he, of course, saw himself as the great leader embodying the will of the people. Even the term fascio, or fascism, comes from this ancient Roman, essentially, group of sticks. So the point is that individual rights are irrelevant. Um, that the individual should sacrifice himself for the nation. That's the point of fascism. But there is also a big difference between Trump's ideology and original fascism, and that is that Trump's ideology is also about extreme individualism. So maybe the closest thing to Trump's ideology is actually Pinochet's ideology. So Pinochet combined economic libertarianism with authoritarianism and killing his political opposition. Pinochet, quite interestingly, actually, when it comes to the economy, liked Milton Friedman, but I have to give credit to Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman, I'm talking about him. He condemned Pinochet quite openly. He said, "This guy is crazy. He's evil. Like the fact that he is using my economic reforms, it's beyond my control." And I respect that decision by Milton Friedman. But I also agree that this extreme individualism that can be found in Trump's ideology is definitely inspired by Trump's experience at Wall Street. And I even do think that many of his geopolitical moves, like trying to force Ukraine to give him as much minerals as possible, I do think that moves like that come from his experience as a businessman. So what Trump appears to be saying is, let's forget about American ideals. It's a cutthroat business. Like all great New York businessmen were probably involved with the mafia, and as a businessman, you actually don't need to follow any higher ideals. Profit is the only ideal in the capitalist marketplace. And I do think that Trump is trying to kind of take that same principle and apply it to geopolitics. But that is not only wrong in a moral sense, it is also, I would argue, not good for the United States in the long run. If you reduce everything to just profit and conquering resources, that makes the world much less stable. And I'll explain why in the long run it is bad for the United States. So Henry Kissinger argues in his book The World Order that American politics is in this eternal struggle between American ideals such as democracy, freedom, spreading those ideals, and the brutal reality of the world in which most countries are not democratic. In fact, they are authoritarian, and they are often doing war crimes, genocide, breaking international law. And the United States is in constant temptation to just pick one very extreme route. One would be to condemn all dictatorships, all regimes that break human rights, such as Saudi Arabia and Israel, but then they would lose their allies and push those very same allies towards the Chinese and Russian spheres of influence, and that in the long run would be bad for the United States. And the other trap that one could fall into, and that I believe that Trump is falling into, and I do think that Kissinger would accuse him of the same thing, the other trap is to say, forget about our ideals, they were always a lie, and therefore all this talk about freedom and spreading democracy and individualism, all of that was a lie from the beginning. But that then destroys American reputation, and it also makes not only your people less motivated to fight for everything, for anything, I want to say, but yeah, it also reduces your allies, your reputation in the world. So a good example of a similar dilemma is a dilemma in which Chinese communists found themselves in. So on the one hand, Mao Zedong was constantly spreading this propaganda about how China is fighting racism and colonialism all around the world. And okay, it wasn't even just propaganda, it was kind of true. Mao Zedong, while being a psychopath, did at the same time help many African nations free themselves from colonialist oppression. But then he also ended up making a deal with the United States, the very same country that he attacked for decades for racism and for helping European colonialists all around the world. He ended up making a deal, an economic deal with the United States, and buying a lot of weapons from them when the risk of the Sino-Soviet war became very high. Then he simply decided to abandon his ideals, which I would argue was kind of a good move, and Henry Kissinger would also agree. Sometimes, for pragmatic reasons, you need to collaborate with regimes that are the opposite of what you find good and moral and virtuous. And for example, another good example of it is Soviet policy towards Ethiopia. So Soviet politicians for a long time were condemning China for not being real communism. Like they claimed your economy is too feudal, too agrarian, but then they were allied with Ethiopia, which also definitely wasn't what Stalin and the other communists of the time would call real communism, quote unquote. Like, I'm not talking about utopian communism, I'm just talking about the planned economies of the time. Now, the most charitable interpretation of what Trump is doing is that he just wants to make peace as quickly as possible in Europe, even sacrifice Ukraine if necessary, and then bring his European allies and tell them, okay, let's fight China now, let's protect Taiwan, China is a bigger threat. So some people claim that Trump is trying to do the reverse Richard Nixon. Let's get Russia as their ally against China. Or at least let's break the partnership between Russia and China. But the problem with that thesis is we just hear other people claim that that's what Trump is doing. We never hear actually Trump say we need Europe as our close allies against China. That's why you have to realize that what I'm doing with Russia is a sacrifice worth making. He isn't saying such things, so that's the problem. And if war breaks out in the South China Sea, I even wonder, would America really protect Taiwan? Because Trump really hasn't said that America would protect Taiwan, unlike Joe Biden that actually did say that. Now, is that a good choice or not? Honestly, I'm not sure, but yeah, to me it appears a bit crazy that Joe Biden was actually more hawkish towards China, and yet some Republicans claim that all this is a part of Trump's master plan to create more allies for the United States in its inevitable fight against China. And even some historians argue that sooner or later there will be a clash between Russia and China for Siberia. But I don't know if that's true. Maybe that will happen in the future, in a few decades. But okay, then the question becomes, if if Trump is not trying to do the reverse Richard Nixon, why is he then breaking the liberal world order? Is it just that he's trying to apply Wall Street principles to international politics? I do think that partially it is that Trump just doesn't get what Henry Kissinger is saying and arguing in his book, and that is that you should never fall in one of these two extremes, completely abandoning your ideals and always following your ideals, and therefore making yourself weaker internationally. But I also do think that Trump would definitely like to become a dictator of the United States, and there hasn't ever really been a dictatorship in modern history that was surrounded by peaceful and friendly nations. And that's why I think that Trump is trying to provoke at least an economic war, if not a real war, with some of his closest allies. Because if you're going to be a dictator, then you need to tell people that you are protecting them against somebody, either eternal or an external enemy. And if America appears to be in a very, geopolitically speaking, peaceful place, then it's really hard to justify a dictatorship. That's an analysis that I recently heard that I do find convincing, actually. And you can tell me in the comment section if you think that maybe Trump is trying to create chaos just for the sake of chaos, so that he can then say, we need a strong leader to bring order back, and I'm going to be that strong leader. Okay, if you like this video, don't forget to drop like, share, and